So, Kawasaki Z1000 versus Suzuki GSX-S1000. This is a tough one, but stick around a few minutes and we're going to compare the two. What's up everyone? It's Alex. So ever since putting out a video on the Suzuki GSX-S1000, which I will try to link up here somewhere, I've had dozens of comments on people asking me to do a comparison between the Suzuki GSX-S1000 and the Kawasaki Z1000 series motorcycles. So that's what we're going to do here real quick today. Just real fast, if you like the video or you like this style of video, hit like and subscribe so I know you enjoy it and I can keep making this style of video for you guys. So real quick here, what do we have? With the Kawasaki Z1000, you have a just under 1000cc-ish inline 4-cylinder engine, water-cooled, bolted up to a 6-speed transmission, chain final drive. It's been in production since about 2003, has had various revisions over the years. Basically, most years and most generations, it's based off of the ZX-9 engine with some slight changes, different tuning, different stuff like that. Over the generations, it's got slight bumps to horsepower and displacement, but overall, basically ZX-9 engine kind of changed a little bit. Depending on what year and generation you get, anywhere from about 125 horsepower to around 140 horsepower, depending on who dynoed it. You know how the drill goes with that. It's basically a very kind of raw power street fighter style motorcycle, naked sport bike, designed to just kind of be a raw, brutal, upright seating, more street motorcycle. With the GSX-S1000 from Suzuki, you also have a just under 1000cc inline 4-cylinder engine, water-cooled, 6-speed transmission, chain final drive. This time the engine was borrowed from a previous generation of GSX-R 1000 Super Sport with some slight tuning differences to it. And you could get them in the naked version or a faired version, which, come to think of it, the Z1000, you could also get a Ninja 1000, which is basically like a faired Z1000, kind of. With the GSX-S1000, depending on what year you get and who dynoed it, you're anywhere from about 140 to about 150 horsepower-ish. So when it comes down to the two motorcycles, the biggest differences are just going to be in the way that they feel and in the power delivery between them. And with the Z1000 especially, since it's been around a lot longer, it's going to depend on what year range and generation Z1000 you get. If you get a much newer year range, like if you get a Z1000 from around the same time period as the GSX-S1000, which is basically like, say, 2016 to present, you're going to get a motorcycle that's much closer in overall specs, power, handling, technology, electronics. All of that stuff is going to be a whole lot closer. If you get an older Z1000, like the two that I had a 2003 and a 2007. If you get an older generation Z1000, you're going to get less horsepower and a little bit more of a raw feeling motorcycle, not as good as suspension. The suspension on my 03 was kind of squishy for what it was. I loved my 2003. It was a very visceral motorcycle, but it was a little bit squishy suspension, and the overall bike kind of maybe wasn't necessarily made to handle the power it put out and everything quite so well, which is why that motorcycle ended up body slamming me one time. Story for a whole different video. But basically between the two bikes, here's my thoughts on what the differences are and what you're going to get. And really with these two motorcycles, there's such a very close competitive segment that it's really going to come down to you as the rider sitting on them, maybe riding the both if you can, and seeing what you feel like, because they just feel a little bit different. But to me, the Z1000 series is much more of your raw, classic street fighter, just kind of muscular, visceral, kind of a more raw experience. Whereas the GSX-S1000, I think, took that and basically just smoothed it out more, made it a little bit more refined. I feel like the GSX-S1000 actually, and shoot me if you want to, but I feel like it handles a little bit better than a Z1000 does. Even a modern generation Z1000, I still think the GSX-S1000 handles slightly better. And I think since it borrowed its engine from a really good generation of GSX-R 1000s, I think the motor, on top of putting out slightly more power, also just feels a little bit more smooth and refined through the entire RPM range. Whereas on the Z1000s, they were really going for taking the ZX-9 engine and tuning it more for low to mid-range torque, which is great on the street, but it makes it not quite so smooth and quite so linear through the entire power curve. So to me, the Z1000 is the bike that you get if A, you want the cheaper option because they've been around for a lot longer, so you can find an older generation Z1000 usually quite a bit less expensive used. And it's also the bike you get if you just like that more raw, visceral Street Fighter, just kind of burly, rah, kind of a feeling to it. Whereas the GSX-S1000 is the bike that you get if you truly do want a naked super sport. The GSX-S1000 to me is much more like you took a GSX-R 1000, took most of the plastic off of it, put more upright bars onto it, tuned it a little bit more for better mid-range and a little bit less track manners, and then said, go. So that being said, for most people, if you're buying a used one, these two motorcycles are both excellent choices, and if you could find a Z1000 for cheaper, I think a Z1000 is an amazing choice. Like I said, I personally have owned two of them and I loved them. The GSX-S1000 to me is just a little bit more refined option, a little bit better handling, and they're just a little bit different. It's really the only way I can describe it. They're just a little bit different. The GSX-S1000 on paper puts out slightly more power, and they just feel different. It's like riding a ZX-10 and a GSX-R 1000. They're the same segment. They have minute differences in power and everything, but they just feel different. So between these two motorcycles, you really owe it to yourself to go ride them both, at least sit on them both and see how they feel. I don't think you can go wrong with either one. They're both fantastic motorcycles. The fact that the GSX-S1000 also comes in a faired version kind of gives it a slight advantage there, but same token, in the Kawasaki line, you can get a Ninja 1000, and those are also fantastic motorcycles if you want a fully faired sport bike that sits upright. So very close competitors, very, very difficult to make very hard comparison, but those are my thoughts on it. As always, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you own one of these two motorcycles? What do you think about it? Have you owned both of them? I would love to hear from someone who has owned both and get their opinion on the subject. I have ridden the crap out of both, and I have owned two Z1000s, and these are my thoughts, okay? The Z900 is also a really good bike to kind of throw into the mix, but I'll do that in a whole separate video. So this one was by request. You guys want Z1000 versus GSX-S1000. There you go. Those are my thoughts on it. As always, have a great day. Ride safe. I'm Alex. Peace.